Who's the youngest person in this retreat? I see a baby. The youngest scientist, huh? Ezra, you a scientist? Come up here. Bring a cushion. Let us share you with our beautiful community. Did you bring a cushion? I saw you sitting on a rock so beautifully. Can you sit with me? I need support, okay? We're going to breathe together, 3 sound of the bell. And just do what you do, okay? I said, enjoy breathing with our beautiful community, our mothers and father, our uncles and auntie. We can close our eyes and we can breathe for ourselves, for our family, and for all the young people, the next generation of scientists, practitioners, yogis, next generation of teachers, students. Dear Thai, dear Sangha, could you introduce yourself to the community?
My name is Ezra.
Yeah, I'll give you this.
My name's Ezra, and I'm here with my parents.
Where do you come from?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire? Yeah. Wonderful. I met Ezra over at Dartmouth. We, in springtime, right? We came over there to the university for 1 week. It was about maybe 15 monks a month. And you came and participated in a lot of stuff, huh?
Yeah, not a lot of stuff, but I did participate.
Yeah, you played, was it
I played catch with Brother Peace.
Yeah, it's so nice to see you. It was the first time we met you. And we were like kind of curious that, and then now I heard you, now you're here, and I heard you went to Blue Cliff too. You went there for a family retreat?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, during the Qigong meditation, I brought my friend.
Oh, you brought your friend too?
Yeah,
wow, you're slowly, I
I
guess, you're sharing your happiness, huh?
Yeah.
You know, during this retreat, an adult person came up to me and they were concerned about you. They say, wow, he must be lonely. Why do we only have one child here? You know, she was very concerned for you. You feel lonely here?
Not really.
No? Why do you think they worry that you'd be lonely?
Because I'm the only kid.
Oh, I see.
Well, there is a baby, but I'm the
Yeah.
only kid.
Ah, Yeah, I don't see you very lonely. I think you know a lot of monks and nuns, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you play with one of the monk brother mindfulness.
Yes.
Yeah?
Nimluk.
Nimbluk. Yes. Beautiful. Can you share his favorite sound?
Chào mới.
As a Vietnamese, he's learning very quickly to mimic one of our brother. During volleyball, when he plays and he slams the ball, and then this now when he plays volleyball, he makes the same exact sound. I mean, you got to do an experiment, scientifically mirroring here. But I wanted to ask you, like, what do you like to? You seem very happy. What makes you happy?
Just like not being alone.
You like playing around with the monks and nuns. Yeah. Wow. How about your mom and dad? What does your mom do?
Yeah, they have work, but
Yeah.
yeah, my mom has been playing catch with me, which has been fun, and same as my dad. But yeah.
They both teach at Dartmouth, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever go to their class?
No.
No? Yeah. We went to your mom and dad's class. Your mom teaches, I think, some kind of biology class.
Yeah, her course was mindful physiology.
No, she was trying to bring some of this. She's trying to bring some of this stuff into my biology class. The monks and nuns were like a little embarrassed, but it was nice to be there. And your dad teaches engineering. I went to his class, and we learned how to use a caliper. And he's also trying to like proselytize Buddhism too. Kind of embarrassed about it.
Yeah, I have very mindful parents.
Yeah. I think I heard that you said to your mom that I'm so happy that you're a Buddhist. Did you really say that?
Yeah, like 6 months ago, she came back from this retreat, or a year ago, I guess. And then I was like, "Oh, Mom, you're not fighting anymore." Yeah.
Wow. You recognize that. That's beautiful. Yeah, they're both kind of scientists, huh?
Yeah.
Teachers. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to be a baseball player.
A baseball player? Nice. Don't forget that sound when you hit it, right?
Chào mời.
Well, thank you for coming up and sharing a little bit.
Yeah, thank you.
You can join back down there, okay? You can bow to the Sangha when you come back down. Just careful. Okay. All right, take the cushion. The Sangha, as you can see, I could not resist to share such a lovely human being with all of you. And what I learned is never underestimate anyone, including children. I noticed some adults, when they said hello to him, they smack him on the head like this. You know, I would never do that. But it's a habit that we have, that we kind of like see children as something to pet or like to be a good boy now, you know? It was right in front of me and I just felt like I felt hurt. You know, I would never even touch the head of a child without care and attention, let alone kind of like, you know. That's how you say hello to children? Gosh. So please, if you see Desiree, please bow down, bow to him, and recognize that he has a lot of potential. As you can see, there's something very beautiful if we can maintain that. And I pray that whatever education system he goes through, he will never lose that. That's something we all recognize. That sound of ah-cha-cha, you know. A liberating sound, yeah, and not to be ever, get trapped. this is for me the healing process that I went through. I went through education, grew up, became an adult. I studied architecture and became very rational, very methodological. I love systemizing things. Yeah, I was very good at that, and I caused a lot of suffering to myself doing that. I think the term is called perfectionist. Perfectionist, yeah. Perfection, perfectionist, perfectionist. Okay, not confectionist. I remember first coming to the monastery, and I was doing the assigned to do meditation hall. If one mat was a little off, and if somebody walks and knocks it, I'll be loyal to architecture, loyal to straight lines, right? And so I grew up in Los Angeles and was educated there. So I'm a urbanite. I love the city, love the nightlife, a lot of the other substance that comes with that. So that's my upbringing. And as I grew up, I began to, recognize a lot of things, a lot of tension, anxiety, explosiveness, just kind of like a chip on my shoulder, kind of strange, and I sometimes would cry on the freeway. So it's definitely I learned a term that I kind of relate to. It's called urban angst. You ever heard of that? Urban angst. I learned it. I forget what book now, but probably one of those existentialist books. But I remember that term stuck with me, and that was my diagnosis, self-diagnosed. They didn't have therapists back then. 80s, Reagan era, just throw them out the street. Sorry, gotta stay away from politics. No, I won't, but I'll make fun of it, okay? So urban angst, I realized that I had, I still have some of it. It's not completely, how do you call it, circulated. It's a kind of like tension that you get living in urban environment. I also grew up and was discriminated and like beat up on, so I had a lot of fear and to survive. I guess survival. I guess is that right? To watch out, when I'm walking home. My family, refugee family from the boat era in the '79. So we came here, and more and more now, as I become a practitioner and I become a monk, I remind myself almost constantly that I'm a refugee, and then don't forget that, because I've been Americanized and I've been changed a lot. I lost my roots, and I met Thai, and he literally saved my life. He helped me discover and heal. So this is the path that we're on, and I'm still on it. Still a lot of healing and transformation to do. So this is a little bit of my personal background. Now I'm less rational. I'm borderline irrational. Diagnosis. So I'm so glad that the orientation, Brother Phap Dung and Sister D covered all the Dharma. So some sister came up to me and she said, "God, how are you gonna top that?" She was worried that I was like, "No, I'm not worried. They did all the Dharma. Now I just make people laugh." And it's I feel I'm grateful for brothers and sisters. I will try my best to share some Dharma, but morally, I think I chose the wrong career. I think I was meant to be a comedian, I think. There was a period where I resist trying to make people laugh because I kept doing that kind of subliminally. And now I kind of accept it. I enjoy making people laugh more than sharing the Dharma. So I apologize to my brothers and sisters, because usually this talk is supposed to be no death, no fear, and you're supposed to touch the ultimate and leave kind of enlightened. But that's a hard task. But I want to just share for you what I found useful in training, in meeting Thai, going to retreat, and becoming a full-time monastic or practitioner, full-time practitioner. Not a full-time Buddha, but full-time practitioner. Meaning that that's my career, and how that has helped me, and that has helped me circulate my angst, my urban angst, the trauma of living in the city and living in a culture that expects and a lot of things of you, including your own Asian community and Asian culture. So this is something I want to share today. And yesterday, someone asked about the Buddha. Who is the Buddha? It's great. I think there's different ways to answer, and Brother Phap touched some of it. And I love sharing about that, to reframe who the Buddha is. Historically, he was a person, and you can read many books. And I think Sister Boygim recommended Old Path White Cloud, the most humanizing book I've ever read in terms of the Buddha's life. I should have a disclaimer in the back. Be careful. This can change your life. It made me become a monk. I read it 3 times. So don't read it more than once. Unless you want to really So it's really not good for your identity, Yeah, so that book is a little bit dangerous. That's called reverse psychology. Yeah. See, I know it's my science. So for me, this is not historical and it's not based on facts. Okay, the Buddha was a young guy. He didn't want to do what his father wanted him to do. Okay, you're not going to find anywhere this stuff. So please do fact checking. Okay, the way I reframe the Buddhist life so I can relate to that is that I think Brother Phap Khoi mentioned it too, or Phap Lu mentioned it. That his father is overprotective, Vietnamese call it overgung. Wanted him to have all the pleasures and all the displeasure. How many of you have children? Yeah, you have that. It's a natural feeling, right? You want to protect your child. Actually, there was a Buddhist mother that I had consultation with. She didn't want her son to suffer. And she actually said that. I didn't want him to suffer. I was like, "Are you Buddhist?" She's like, "Yes, I know all my sutras." I was like, "Well, what does this Buddha say about suffering? That you cannot even avoid suffering and protect others from suffering, including your child." And this is what the father of the Buddha tried to do with him. And as you can imagine, as a young man, I myself, I think many young people always rebel against your parents. That is our nature. Kind of like mom says this, we say that. Dad says that. It's part of our growing up. But more importantly, I think the Buddha recognized that there was a kind of in a dis-ease, they call it, ill being, not peaceful energy. And he just had a child, a son, and he realized that this is what he's going to transmit, this anxiety, this fear, if he doesn't find a way to, to circulate that, to free himself from that. And this is very beautiful, and I can relate to that. So he vows to go on a journey and commits himself to finding a kind of peace for himself and to bring that back to his son and his family. This is the intention of this young person, to really find healing, to find a sense of well-being, enough so that you don't transmit it. And this was the beginning of his search. And I totally relate to that because it's also my journey and many of the monks and nuns and your journey as well. And we all want to not have this chip on our shoulder. And we also want to help other people not have chips on their shoulder. And this is the spiritual path, the beginning of a human being, a person in India, 2,600 years ago. Isn't that beautiful? I'm sure there are many others before him who also had that realization. So in terms of the evolution of consciousness, from, what is it, Homo this and Homo, before Homo sapien, Homo erectus, and then Homo whatever, crawling, and Homo crawlers. I forget my biology, sorry. But as you can see, can you imagine the first half ape, half human-like person? I love to sit and meditate in the mountain, and I sit and I look at an oak tree, and I come in touch with my ancestor, the first kind of like, ape-like human. I realized, like, no, I'm not gonna get that banana. I don't need to. They can have it. I have enough. The first ape to say, I don't need to jump around. That must have happened. Or like the first ape that sat there and recognized the sunrise. So I don't do deep meditation. I actually fantasize. It's amazing. I sit in front of a boulder and I have conversation with the boulder. It's like, how old are you? Where's your calendar? So you begin to see us being here and the whole process of us bringing to this moment of awareness. Isn't that incredible? All of a sudden, you become very, touch the non-human element. That our consciousness is a continuum of slowly awakening from one teacher, one human being to the next. From our teacher, Thai, to us, to my elder brothers and sisters. It's like lineage of slowly everyone helping us become more aware of something. Now that is, for me, inspiring. And that's what keeps me, how do you say, make the life of the Buddha very relevant. The life of our teacher and all the monks for over 2,600 years, monks and nuns have been doing this. That is, I like to say, the longest living startup, or institution, they say. That's the longest living human-created institution. Look, the Roman era, the British Empire, what else? The Incas, all those empires. Can you imagine that? You go to Sequoia National Park, there's a little room in there that shows you the timeline of one of the sequoia tree, over 3,000 years old. Have you guys ever been there? It's all around the building like this. And then you can go and see when the first see the sequoia, and then you see like the birth of the Buddha is like here, birth of Jesus, birth of, this tree has been sitting around watching these bunch of ants kind of do their empire. It's incredible. I stood there and touched a kind of timeless endeavor of this human journey. So for me, that's how I want to situate who the Buddha was. Is a natural process of us as whatever organism that slowly just had woken up and said, no, I'm not going to do that. So in a way, the animal and all its instincts and survival and slowly evolving to realize there's more than just survival. There's more than that. There's meaning, there's purpose. So we do things now are against actually the natural process. Like for us, we are not going to propagate anymore. That's very unnatural. Why would we do that? And there are many, many people doing that over 2,600 years. What is so more worthwhile doing than just propagating and so on? Interesting, huh? Anyway, this is like the way how I see the career, I call it evolutive Buddhism. That actually Buddhism is not just a religion, although we have made it also. It has served us as a religion, but in the process of evolution of consciousness, it is in line with that, as many other religions. So for me, it is a kind of the evolution of awakening. Like, imagine plants before they have flowers, and then the first flower happened. Like the leaf said, I'm gonna be a flower. Can you imagine that? For me, this is a whole process. And for me, I love to meditate on that, to put ourselves and the planet in this more timeless, and you'll see, and when you touch that, it really nourishes me, and it gives me a lot of energy. I think the organizer named this retreat the Buddha the Scientist, which it's been like my koan, for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And there are many other titles. I think Thai gave a retreat, and it was called The Science of the Buddha, right? It was part of a 21-day retreat, and it was always the feet of the Buddha, the heart of the Buddha, the brain of the Buddha, and I think he had one, the breath of the Buddha. And then we had one for neuroscience. I think it was called the science of the Buddha. Either that or the brain of the Buddha. I forget. The brain with the Buddha would be trippy. You have all these nodes. But you can have the science of the Buddha from the coming from that perspective. Or I was thinking the science of awakening. Because the Buddha, as you learn from Brother Phap Dung, it just means someone who is awake is a title. Bud is to awaken something, wake someone. So Buddha just means awakening. So it could be the science of awakening. Can someone start that science? I think it's happening. Psychology, neuroscience, and so on. It's slowly going there now, but we need more instruments, right? They love instruments. How about the science of liberation? Think about that one. Or the science of relieving suffering and generating peace and happiness. So we need a few more sciences. And so please help us develop those for all those of you who are very good at, uh, systemizing things. And from the Buddha side, we can call the awakening of the scientist is another title. How about that? The awakening of a scientist. Can you imagine a scientist coming into their classroom or their laboratory and they're like smiling and they're walking mindfully and like, how are you guys? How are you doing? How about the awakening of the sciences is another title. The awakening of the sciences. To not be so obsessive with material and spirit, but to somehow see this non-dualistic, the non-dualistic connection between the material and the spirit. So these things I've been messing with in my mind, and it's quite joyful thinking about it. That I was imagining like there's a school and that I could take a class on the sciences of awakening. How about the liberation of the sciences? Does that make sense? The liberation of the sciences. Can you imagine that conference of scientists coming together? You know, before a conference, there's no brochures. There's no note taking, no PowerPoint. I went to one. It was great. Oh my God. Shantam and I, one of our late Dharma teacher, we had to take breaks. It was the Dalai Lama, and it was like science. It was so intense. I mean, we had to literally like go take a break because sometimes you do this practice, it does lower a little bit your ability to hold information. So I know that is the side product of meditating. You're not gonna, you're not gonna be very successful of becoming one of those that can hold a lot of information and come up with answers quickly. Well, maybe it's just me. I'm sorry, my brothers. Maybe Brother Phap is more high USB, But mine, I noticed that my capacity to think a lot for too long, it's reduced. So I just wanted to share that, at least for me. I might be different from my other brothers and sisters. So in terms of the Buddha, the scientist, this is something that I encourage us. And I also want to share a little bit of, our teacher, how he ended up in the West. And that's important for me to also frame so that it can ties aspiration, ties purpose, I can relate to, and it has meaning for me, and that is also my aspiration. So the way I like to tell the story is that Thai was born during two wars, the French occupation of Vietnam and then the American occupation. You imagine that? That's how long he's lived through two wars. I lived at the end of World War, the American War, and I didn't see much of bodies, dead bodies, but I know some of my brothers and sisters have seen that, and it's quite traumatic. And so this is who Thai is. He's gone through a lot of trauma, seen his own colleagues, killed, gone missing, and so on. His own students missing. So this is the birth of our tradition. Trauma from war, from suffering, the human-made suffering. And this is the tradition that we're in. It was born from, they call it a sea of fire. There's a book that Thai wrote himself in English called The Lotus and the Sea of Fire, to situate how Buddhism can help end the war. It's beautiful. I return to that book constantly to remind us of the root of our tradition, of what we are aspiring to do to help. And Thai began to work for peace, try to create schools for youth with social service to help alleviate the suffering caused by war, bombing, and bullets. So he tried to do that in Vietnam, and then he was invited to come to the West to help bring a voice to the Vietnamese people, especially the villagers and the people who are just normal people, villagers and parents and family and mothers and children. They didn't have a voice. So Thai wanted to go to tell the West, Vietnam wants just the war to end. We don't care who wins. So Thai was traveling around Europe and the US to call for peace. And this was also the beginning. They engage, active, trying to help end the war. And because of that, he was not able to return back to Vietnam because nobody wanted to end the war. The Americans still wanted to, and the northern resistors. So Thai was in the West, and this is where also he began to see the roots of war. So when Vietnam War ended, Thai began to help the refugee, the Vietnamese people, and to help the trauma, the difficulty for the Vietnamese family to adapt. And also, so this is the beginning of Plum Village. And Thai began to also see the suffering in people in the West, the urban angst, the stress, the trauma themselves, the inequality and all the separation, exploitation. And so he began to see that the war hadn't ended, and he continued to call for peace by holding retreats and teaching people mindfulness and meditation. And for me, Thai's work to call for peace never ended. You think the Vietnam War ended, but it hasn't. There's many, many Vietnam wars still going on. So Thai sees that, and he continues the whole retreats for us to find that peace and find that healing for each one of us. So at the retreat, collectively, we can really heal as a society. And Thai saw that as the root of the war. I think some of you have heard Thai's share about him being asked by a reporter or challenged by a reporter, right? So if you care so much about your country, what are you doing here? Why don't you go back to Vietnam and help? And Thai said, well, for peace. He was very upset. I don't want to, that question really challenged him to see that the anger in this young person and challenging that. And Thai said, the root of the war is here. When you want to water a plant, you don't water the leaves, you water the roots. So the root of war is here in this country. The way we look and the fear that we have and framing we're communists, Vietnamese communists. The naming, the labeling, the demonizing, give a good excuse so that we can bomb. So that was happening right here. So Thai came to ask for that. remove that kind of ignorance, to wrong perception. And so this is for me, what I see Thay's work and how it relates to me, to remove wrong perceptions about things. So this is all what we do now, is to help people remove wrong perception. All our retreats, that's all it is. You come there, you slow down after 2 or 3 days. You're lucky, you're gonna go like, oh man, that's what happened to me. My own perception of my father, my family, my culture, white people. I didn't have that. That's the new thing. Back then, it was just a bunch of bullies, but like being beat up, and I feel it's not their fault, It's like no one knew. So it's also helping me to remove my own anger, my wrong perception, the narrative that I created. And Thai helped heal me in that sense, to not be so, always looking for somewhere to blame. But I started working to help myself be happy and to enjoy the things that are still in my life. So this framing of the Buddha, framing of Thai's story, and what we do now to continue our teacher and the way, the path of the Buddha. And for us, we all need to have a purpose, have a meaning, a reason why we do anything. And this is something in our society, what we, young people, when we have wake-up retreat or even teen camp, they're looking for that. A lot of despair and separation comes from having a kind of like not knowing a purpose or something that they can see that inspires them. So for me, when I first met Thai in the Plum Village, I didn't know anything about Buddhism. I mean, in the practice-wise. My family went to temples and we did the cultural Buddhist stuff, which with the Christian, you have the Sunday church. Do Sunday church and then you go home. I did the Buddhist temple and then went to eat dim sum. That was the contract. You guys go to temple, I take you to dim sum. So that was my Buddhism. But I didn't understand anything. But Thai taught me that there is a Buddhism that has a path, a method to actually cultivate more understanding, more healing, more transformation. And this is our task now, to help society touch this. Thai's deep aspiration, the Buddha's aspiration. The Buddha's aspiration in terms of evolution, right? So now we have to resist that. You know what my favorite place to resist that is? I've shared this before, is in the elevator. Yeah. This is how the elevator trains people to be like, oh man, I go in the elevator, I'm like, and especially I have my brothers, we like, hey, and if you can have a conversation or smile at someone and they'd acknowledge you, at first they're kind of awkward. It's like, what button what button you? No, I play around with it, and then to get an interaction. And that's my way of resisting the dehumanizing, the unawakened, the kind of like mind your own bit. I mean, you gotta pick who you do it to, though. You get more skillful at it. Don't mess with everyone, all right? But there are a few in the elevator you can mess with. So this is the task that is at hand, to resist, to bring more peace, to bring more humanity to things. Also the freeway, the classroom possibly. Maybe we listen to the bell just to chill a little bit. Please allow me to do some of my responsibility. I think Sister D left me with a few things to share with you. I'll kind of summarize quickly what Phap Lu and Sister D shared, because it was quite a lot, and I knew a lot of you guys came up to take pictures. So much flipping that actually this broke. Did you know that? I heard it broke. Someone just fixed it. So I feel like at least I should use it a little bit, okay? Because someone fixed it. So I think Sister D had a chart up here, and it said it was like body, feelings. I think you took pictures of this already, so I'll kind of like skim over it. And mind, and then perception, right? So we're doing review, okay? So you know the answer, please yell it out. So these are what you call the four foundations of. So all these are concepts that help us. They're not. The Buddha's intention was not to like describe how things work and how the world works, but he just did it enough so that you can practice. This is very important to distinguish between the path, the science of awakening, and the science of like describing the the whole theory of the universe. Okay, this right here is enough for us to practice the four foundations. And in there you have the 16. There's four here, and then actually I think did she use mental formation? Mind states. That's right. That's right. She used a new term. Mind state. And then there's four of these, and then there's four of these. I think she said I should try to cover some of that, and I will try. Um, and I hope I can share this in a way that it can help you practice. That's my intention. Here, in the Buddhist teaching, what I learned from Thai from the early days, the way they look at who are you? And one way to one way to remember is that you're made of 5 elements. Okay, and Thai drew a very beautiful, how do you call it? I think he called it a tangerine in the early days. Yeah. So there's 5 pieces of the tangerine, and you are made of those 5 pieces. And that's body, feelings. Let's put it in there. Our bodies, our feelings, our perception, our mental formations, and our consciousness. And please, as I share this, if there's something you don't understand, just let it fly. Okay, I was taught by our teacher to listen in that way. If something like and it sticks, just let it stick. If it doesn't, let it go by. So don't use too much of this kind of like what we're used to in school. So our body, feelings, perception, and mental formation. I think Sister D shared a little bit about that. How our feelings and our perception are also mental formations. And for me, this really helped me. Why did the Buddha break our feelings and our perception? And that's helped me in my practice to take care of my feelings and to take care of my perception, because they have a lot to do with my suffering and my happiness. So those things I began to pay attention to. Like when I would attend Thai, I come back and I feel really sad. He'll feel it. So I began to recognize more of my mental states. I remember also feeling unworthy for the first time and being okay with it. As a monk, I was a perfectionist. As you come into the practice, you fall in love. I think somebody mentioned that yesterday. Everything is la la land, right? And you stay a year, second year, third year, then all your habits come back. So my habit of becoming perfectionist, mindful monk, every time Thai's around or the monks around, the elder brothers around, I walk like this. Right? When they're not around, yeah, whatever, man. So there was definitely a conflict. Feelings. I felt I couldn't be perfect. I tried really hard for 3 years. So much that my liver hardened. They said I had some weird form of cancer. But I knew it was cancer of my perfectionist mind. So feelings, you have pleasant feelings and then unpleasant feelings. And so to be mindful of this and to practice, just be aware of it. That was my first training, to be okay with an unpleasant feeling, and slowly to be okay with my sadness. That was the top of my or the bottom of my pit. Being a monk and feeling kind of like I'm a imposter. What is it? Do they have that word in scientists? Is there an imposter scientist? Yeah, yeah. But how does a scientist become an imposter? Do they have such a thing? Yeah. And so for me, that was a really, like, God, I have all the conditions in my life. Thai is there, the monks and nuns there. I live in a place where everybody wants to come to, but I was feeling sad. And so for me, that was my difficulty to accept that. And soon I began to recognize it, to accept it more, and to also look at my history of growing up in my family, in my culture. So my understanding, first accepting it. So as I think Brother Phap Dung mentioned, stopping and deep looking. So this whole process of training to be mindful is to first to train to accept, to recognize, to acknowledge, to calm, to accept. These exercise here. So that's why feelings here, we first nourish ourselves with joy. So find ways to nourish yourself. So these two elements are very important in our step. So there's always something that we can be happy about. And this is for me my first training to recognize. And I remember practicing laying there and going, I don't have a toothache. I literally lay there. I don't have a toothache. So this is Thai's kind of insight that we can actually, in Buddhism, they say there are neutral feelings. And then Thai also invented a mixed feeling. Not invented, but he just kind of discovered there's also mixed feelings. Like, when you eat chili, it's going to mess you up. You're going to look ridiculous with all the sweat, but you still bite it. Or like Thai would say that when he get massages or acupressure, it's very painful, but he loves it. Right? So neutral feeling, another neutral feeling is I used to just brush my teeth and just get it done. And then Thai shared with us meditation and toothbrushing. And he said, and then I remember he said, like, you can switch hand. And I was like, oh, okay. And I switched my left hand and I started brushing slower and actually thanking my teeth. So this is something I did brushing because I remember, anyway, I had a habit of brushing my teeth like I was doing concrete work, Like, what do you call those machines? My whole arm is like, how many of you do that? It's like, yeah, and the dentist always say, how come your gums are so, like, receded? I was like, I have no idea. It's like, pay attention how you're brushing your teeth. And I realized, it's just small little pieces, but I brush it as if it's like a concrete block. So I remember meditating, in the bathroom in Upper Hamlet downstairs and training to, not get it done. And that was some of the first training that I had to do. And so this is the lab work of what you're learning here. Okay, there's, what is it? Chemistry and then lab, right? There's whatever science and then there's lab. So in a monastery like this is both the class and the lab. So when you do how many do chopping? Yeah? Yeah, chopping. How many of you did toilets? Wow, that's great. Yeah, there's people go, how do you get people to come here and clean your toilets? And they pay for it. We had a man, he designs like resorts. He stayed for 1 week, and I remember, I'll never forget what he said. It's like, you're amazing. I spent 20 years designing resorts to entertain people, and they leave very unhappy. You guys, your community, you get them there and clean your toilets, and they leave happy. Isn't that amazing? That's the laboratory, you see? And I had a Dharma sharing with the group that does the toilet, I recognize that they have the most insight. If you're doing just leaf thing, it's very meditative and it's very zen, right? You do toilets, it's like, I remember, anyway, people had a lot of enlightenment, a lot of beautiful stories about their overcoming their feeling, unpleasant feeling. You see that? So the laboratory really gave them insight. And this is the difference between a study center and a practice center. So how can we bring the science of awakening so that it includes these elements of insight, that you can create an environment where, young students are like, wow, they're having liberation thoughts about their own family, their own situation, about how they see themselves. So this is what we would love for you. I share this so that it can trigger and hopefully inspire you to re-look at your environment, whether you're a scientist, a teacher, or a colleague in a journal department. So feelings, very important for me when I began to practice, to recognize and identify, is this pleasant? Is it coming from my body? Is it an ache? And I call it. This is an unpleasant feeling coming from eating too much chili, hot instant noodle, coming from eating too much. So you recognize the feeling, unpleasant, and you say, where did it come from? From my body or from my perception? So how I look at something. You see someone do something, like, oh, unpleasant. That comes from you, how you perceived it. All the other people are fine with it, but you recognize, like, wow. So all of a sudden, I do a trick, and I'm like, okay, I borrow their view. And this happens a lot in meetings. When I have a kind of irritation in a meeting, and then I look across the room and I borrow that brother's perspective. He's not bothered. So you begin to train. You see the training? To recognize your unpleasant feeling and where it comes from. And then you have a choice. You want to stay there or you change the peg. So this is a training, right? It's very hard to perfect, actually. It's constantly happening. So it's a continual training. And another thing I wanted to share was here, the body, we become aware of our body. And then we also learn to calm our body. So that's the first step in our training, in our lab. Learn to do that regularly. Many of us, we working or doing whatever we do, but our body suffer from it. So taking breaks, learning to do total relaxation as you experience here. How many first time doing total relaxation, deep relaxation? Yeah, please bring that into your lives. It's hard when you leave because the time thing, it has different value out there. Here, it's a different value, right? When you go back, all of a sudden, oh my God, I don't have time for this. Recognize that. That's gonna be your, whatever, gonna be knocking at your door. It's like, oh, I don't have time for that. Oh, even 5 minutes, you won't have time. But here, it's so unproductive. We're, okay, feeling, let me go through this quick. See, I love making people laugh more than sticking with the Dharma here. Feelings. Second, like I shared already. Learn, be aware of your feeling, calming feeling. That is the science of what we're doing, the laboratory, okay? And in terms of mental formation, you become aware of how your mental states are. I believe you're aware of your mental formation, right? And you learn to gladden it, gladden it, and what else? Concentrate it. So first, again, the methodology here is anything that's alive needs nourishment. So your feelings needs nourishment. If you're going to deal with unpleasant feelings, you need energy. So don't start with like unpleasant. People just focus on their trauma, their narrative. That's like really debilitating, right? Is that debilitating? Yeah. So this is something that we have to learn in the the method that the Buddha taught. First, anything in life, anything that's alive, pay attention. It needs nourishment to heal. You see an oak tree, gets broken the limb, the roots will adjust, find nourishment, and then it learns to slowly close the healing. Look at anything that has that life force, and you can learn from that. That's very much what the Buddha taught. So in terms of your feeling, learn to generate a feeling of joy. You might not believe it, but you gotta start to train that. Like, I never thought about not having a toothache. Like, whoever thinks about not having a toothache? You only think about it when you have the toothache. It's like, God, I wish I didn't have this toothache. But now you don't have a toothache. Can everyone try it? Yeah? Okay, we'll listen to sound of the bell so we can really do a lab here. Because this literally like helped me begin my thought process, not to think negatively about everything. There's always something that is going well. And right now, if you have a toothache, maybe the other side of your jaw, okay? At least I don't have all my teeth in ache. So we can breathe to this non-toothache moment. And what was interesting about this is the gladdening. It's the same as doing this, gladdening, and then concentrating, and then liberating. And this is very interesting to recognize that when you it's a mental formation, things that in your head are like deep entrenched perception. Okay, perceptions. Okay, I think Phap Lu or the Sister D shared about how we perceive things. Like you see somebody and then you're like, yeah. You have a lot of ideas, it's informing you. Especially if it threatens you, you will remember it more and you will fortify it. Mental states, your mind is filled with a bunch of that. We call them seeds, okay? So we begin to create a model. The trendy word now is narrative. Yeah, that is the most up-to-date word. We all have a narrative. It used to be just story, but now it's narrative. We all have a narrative of who we are, where we come from, my culture, where I am on this planet, whatever. These are all mental formation. And formation, remember, it's a technical term Thai like to share. A table is a formation, a flower, this hall. These are physical formation. Mental formation is just stuff that form in your head and is entrenched. And that is the source of it all. Why do you suffer? Go back to your mental formation. I was like, because I have this idea about my thing and they're not listening to me. Whatever. They don't see me, they don't hear me, they are not respecting me, whatever, me. I mean, of course, I'm talking about this is not interpersonal stuff, this is your own work, okay? Interpersonal stuff, we'll talk about community and how to handle that. And it's important here to remember to also liberate it. So your narrative, your stories, if they don't serve you, liberate yourself from it. If it's causing you suffering or causing other people suffering, it's not helping. If it's causing you to go around and look at people with such sour mental thoughts, that is not a healthy mental formation. If you have mental formations about yourself that is like always, how do you call it, repressing, oppressing, and you beat yourself up with thoughts, those are mental formations. So these areas are thoughts, notions, ideas. Remember that? No, narratives, stories. I am a good monk, mindful monk. Remember my story? You cannot do that. It 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 doesn't flow. Something very kind of self-imposed on yourself. So many stories, and you have to learn to find. I mean, not complete liberation of it, but enough so that it doesn't cause you suffering and other people suffering as much. Okay, remember we're part-time. Okay, and I always put that addendum there because I don't want to be a perfectionist and I don't want you to be a perfectionist. We do our best to liberate it. And you're going to make mistakes because we're going to put that label on others repeatedly and then say sorry and say sorry to yourself. And here, in terms of perception, another way of referring to this is the kind of objects of mind. Okay, a little bit. These are a little bit technical, but why I want to share about that is this is about how we look at the world, and this is what the Buddha, the evolution of the consciousness that I told you about. That he recognized why his father was suffering, why people around him were suffering, why he was suffering. Is he began to see our view and how we look at the world. Okay, so these are objects of our mind. So this is a more like an internal thing. And here is more about, they call it the phenomena. The technical term in Vietnamese is Phap. It's like the world, basically, or the nature of things. And the first thing he observes is it's impermanent. Breathing in, I observe the impermanent nature of all phenomena. Wow. Can you imagine teaching a course that is your first half of the semester? And the homework is students go home and find me something that is not that is not that is permanent, that is not impermanent. I invite all of you, and many scientists have tried, to try to find something that does not change. It's kind of cool, huh? Even your feelings. Yesterday, you felt like something at Dharma sharing? Before you came here to Deer Park, you had a thought about it? It's like, I don't know about all these people. And now you have a different, a little bit experience. I wouldn't say it's the reality of things, but it goes on. The impermanent nature of phenomena, including our narrative, our ideas, our notions. 20 years ago, what did you think was your happiness? 10 years ago, right? In 20 years, you think you will think the same way? In 50 years, if you're still around, it's pretty cool, huh? This is, you could sit and meditate like this. 10 years ago, I was in Plum Village. And I situate myself so you can look at the past so that you can learn the impermanent nature of your thoughts and who you are and what you think is happening. Or that's just, how about physical things? Yeah. So this is a good challenge. So this is one of the, how do you call it, ways of looking. Or Thai would say, or the Buddha would say, it's a kind of concentration. So this is not saying that this is reality. But what is different is that the Buddha discovered this so that we can see with it, right? So it's a way of looking. Remember that. So don't argue about people, about things are impermanent, okay? Don't get into that argument. If they say it's impermanent, say, yeah, sure, it's permanent. Don't argue with them, okay? Because Thai would say, you're wasting saliva. And so these are not concepts for you to argue about really, this is how really things are. You ever try to convince people that? It gets you more angry and more irritated. You have better things to do. These are discovered so that we can look around. Look at we sit down, look at our feelings, look at our perception, look at our ideas. So here, look at impermanence of things, and then we observe the disappearance of desire. And so then now we're getting into more the liberation aspect. Here we liberated our minds so that we can see clearly. As a scientist, if you already come with premonition and presumptions, you can affect your experiment and your data. As you know, that's why we have peer review, right? To make sure that people are not coming with already a pre-notion. It's the same thing with our mind. We liberate our mind. We learn, at least, try our best to be not attached with an outcome. Then we can use that mind to look at the world. And I would like to prepare you for next year. It will be election year. This is the key to not suffer next year. Okay, remember this. I see some of you already shaking your head. Oh, man. Please, all right? We need to resist the negativity, resist the newspaper, resist the, what is it? What do they go? The tour of the whatever. They go around propaganda tour. It's nothing different from Vietnam, trust me. This right here, you desire an outcome, you're going to suffer next year. So prepare now. So all of you who are shaking your head, please go like this. This is evidence-based. You do this, you will believe in yourself. You can do it. Or else you will have a lot of unnecessary saliva losing. Yeah. I'm already on the tour to prepare you for the election. And my motive is to prepare you not to, lose hope, despair, and that negativity, right? I want to have you become resistive for that next year, okay? Don't let that infiltrate your mind because of your desire for an outcome. Everything is impermanent, even if it doesn't go your way. Aha. If the vote doesn't go your way and it goes blue, you go, that will be impermanent, okay? So this is applied, applied practice, okay? That's why I'm bringing it really home with you scientists. So whatever you ascribe your blue or red, be careful next year. Observing our desire for an outcome. And then observe the no birth, no death nature. And this is an invitation. It is one of the deepest insight. So I don't expect, you might understand it intellectually, but it is one of the deepest, how do you call it, liberating insight, if it is for real. It will liberate you from your fear of the end of the world, end of our planet Earth, end of our climate, end of this empire. Come on, like the sequoia tree. Go and bow down to the sequoia tree and how it smiles at the human drama with the little Dharma. I love that yesterday. And this is not to like kind of like white, how do you call it? Dharma wash things. Like, oh, everything will be fine. You know, it's all impermanent. No, it's to liberate you so that you can be a force to resist. This is how you do not become heavy as a human being. To enjoy your life, to enjoy your work, and help people do the same. To liberate their mind, heal from their suffering. You see that? You see the social work that our teacher is looking at? This is the root of all war. Why a whole nation will rise up out of anger and fear and support the bombing of another country. Thai saw that. Thai saw that, and during after the 9/11, Thai was aware of that. That is very dangerous, and Thai shared it with us. And he said before he gave the talk in Riverside Church in New York, in front of a huge audience that will go public. I'll never forget what Thai gathered the monks and nuns, and he said, if Thai doesn't do this, he cannot be your teacher. Yeah, I was very moved with that. Sorry. It's okay. Yeah, I just see our teacher he's very consistent, you know, his love for humanity. Ooh. I think there's still a lot of that war stuff still in me. Second time I've given a Dharma talk in a row and cry. So, ching, yeah. um, so this no birth, no death is a very deep insight in alleviating our primal fear. You see the evolution of consciousness. What is the most fearful thing that can happen to an animal? Our death. Isn't that amazing that the Buddha is like, ah. So to observe that things, we have the idea, they come and go, birth and death. But if you see it in terms of the continuity of human consciousness, of the planet, of the biosphere, we can understand it intellectually, right? That actually, we are our ancestor. I am my father. I am nothing but less than a continuation of my father. I have his habit. I like to hide My dad is the best at hiding. I like to work with things. So now I do a lot of things with a lot of awareness of my father and what he did, fixing things. Also, our teacher. People continually ask, and and so on. And we have to say, what do you think our teacher is now? That's a good question. Where is our teacher? The other day we do walking meditation up there, where we spread his ash. Everyone somewhere a little bit corner everywhere. It's not very scientific. It's a little borderline superstitious. But it is a kind of symbolic act to actually, how do you call it, complete the cycle, so we don't hang on to this sign of who Tai is, or who the Buddha was, or whoever your loved one who's lost. That we actually, they are with us by the way we live, by the way we are learning to continue their aspiration. You see, it is energetic, spiritual. So this is the spiritual dimension that we're lacking, and we're slowly losing in our society, in our culture. We're becoming quite scientific and rational and so on. And it's become quite almost like a religion. And I grew up with that. And Tai helped me, come back to and touch a kind of like continuity of spiritual energy. Do you see that? Is a very, and you have to, again, it is a way of looking, okay? That we continually have to cultivate in ourselves. Because our tendency as an animal, as the limbic brain likes to do, I think Sister D shared about manas. Yeah, we only like pleasure, avoid displeasure, ignore dangers of pleasure, right? Ignore ignore suffering. We have all these tendencies. Like, you can relate it to an animal. You watch an animal, and then there's this evolution of our desire, our purpose, and that's for me. In what do you call it? Instilled in these last four: observing, letting go. Last one there, and this begins with observing and letting go. So right here is the scientific method of the Buddha. Okay, this is what the Buddha sat down. And many people, many human Homo sapiens probably had a thought about it. It's like, God, do we really need to do this? Do I have to run all the time? Do I have to freeze all the time? Do I have to be afraid all the time? Many people had that before the Buddha, but he's, I would say, the first one to actually systemize it, clarified it, and put it into terms, and started to spread it systematically. Now that is the scientist. And he went around and had other people check. And so this is I guess, the science of awakening. And I want to encourage you to infiltrate the academia with this, please. We need your help. There's not a lot of monks and nuns around. There's a lot now, 3 centers here. But in terms of what's at hand to resist, we need all of your help. Clear-minded thinking, kind of like, what do you call it? I hope you're good at convincing people in your practice. I think many are doing that at the higher education. We recently visited Dartmouth and Harvard. I think Harvard is starting this center. So it is slowly going in. Someone invited me to do a course. And I have the curriculum. It's called How to Be a Human Being. And they loved it. I actually met with them. But I realized you got to teach twice a week. I was like, I don't got time for that. So if any of you want to do it, I'll give you the curriculum. And you could do it for me. And so halfway, I said, I don't think I could do this. So I chickened out. Yeah, it's just, I enjoy hiking in the mountain more. But we need your help to create a course on how to be a human being. And this right here is the skeleton of the curriculum. All right, this is not just to relieve your suffering and enjoy your life, but it's to help people, help change our society, and have a collective awakening. And this is what's at hand. And next year, we're going to need everyone, okay? We're counting on you to radiate hope, positivity, and not like I used to do, like I call it laser beam, kind of like sharp and destructive thoughts about things. We don't need more of that, even though it is very tempting and you have all the evidence to do so. Please don't contribute to that in the collective energy, especially next year. And because people have come to me already about it. Actually, this is inspired by someone asking over. He's afraid for what's coming next year. I was like, chill out. It's like, you're a practitioner. Don't be fooled by the signs. Remember, Sister D? By the labels. Remember the signs, the labels. The news articles are like propaganda. They might have truth and so on, but it is propaganda to take your attention and make it negative. And it has all the evidence, so you're going to be very convinced. So I had to share that. I would feel guilty if I didn't, because I know many of you are rational thinking people, and those are the easiest to actually have all the reasons to hate, okay, or to be irritated and to be angry. So we need you to be a little bit more irrational and come back to knowing and taking care of our emotions, okay? So this is a task for all of us. And I'll leave here with one last thing about community. Our teacher, as he was teaching retreat, he began to see the benefit of community, of bringing people together, and actually rehumanizing people. This retreat, the way you experienced this week, it was Thai's vision for social change, to have retreats and to create that in many places around, like the Sangha we mentioned. So this is the mechanism that Thai has formed to affect social change. Because you don't know who's in the audience, whatever scope and whatever effect they can have. And we've experienced it over and over again, that somebody among you will be like have an aha moment. and you return to your place, whether it's a newspaper, an institution, or a campus, and you'll have a moment and an opportunity to actually help better the situation, to change the culture, as Thai would say, and to help people change their point of view and to look at things differently. And so this is the collective vibing that we're continuing Thai's effort ever since the war in Vietnam. And this is, as you can see, we continually, support and he said, not only support, but give machineries and ammunition to places to encourage war, right? So you see the war in Vietnam hasn't stopped. This is why we need community. I would call it a community resistance. So as scientists, as reasonable, rational, and thoughtful people, we need your help to help kind of find skillful ways to help us change the way the world is being set up. And I think that's what I read this morning on the people who took the 5 mindfulness training. All of you are kind of like inspired to change something, right, in your life. That's why you take the 5 mindfulness training. And so this is what we call someone who's awakened. You awaken to something about yourself that you want to change. And it's very important for you to actually find like-minded communities and friends to support that. So we can become more, more stable by helping each other. This is encouragement for all of you to go back and build Sangha, to create little, even if it's only 4 or 5 people on campus, please do that. I think we'll hear more about that. I think Lillian recently shared with us that she has a whole meditation group in Harvard. And we need, we have too many smart people that, you know what I mean? They have answers to everything, except it's so cold. Yeah, the climate change, the situation on the planet, the business people, the politicians. I went to these COP stuff. Man, it's cold. It's like hard, and it's very business. They all the emotional, the young people, the indigenous people. We have to protest and share our voice outside. But you come in the hall, it's dark, and it's like office. Everybody's wearing suits. There's no music. You go outside, they're dancing, playing music, protesting, XR, yeah? And so we need not just smart people, we need happy people, we need peaceful people, and we need people who have healed and see the world differently. The interconnection, the interbeing of things, to not discriminate between the planet, the biosphere, and the human. So this is, please help us with that. I hope, that you found this week. I think we have another day tomorrow to also hear from our beautiful scientist practitioner. And so we'll continue. And thank you for listening and for being here with us. So we'll end here with the 3 sounds of the bell. And let's come back to our non-toothache awareness. Okay? This moment, my teeth, my lungs, my back, my heart.